Hi, welcome to another episode of Thread Talks. And I'm really thrilled today to have a phenomenal entrepreneur. She was a journalist, aromatherapist, nutritionist, and she's funneled that all into a brand that is probably familiar to everyone. I should imagine everybody has one of those candles burning in their homes. I'm delighted to welcome Nicola Elliott, founder of NEOM.
Hello, thank you so much for asking me.
So nice to have you. I know that you live in Harrogate, you were saying, and you've come down, but you're
Harrogate and London, 50-50.
okay. So, well, it's great that you found the time to come in, and I love your brand. And I think for me, it reminds me when we launched our brand, it was at a similar time, and I used to see your candles burning in Fenwick, and it was such a joy because one, it was natural, which I think was, a first at the time.
Absolutely.
And also you combined, really amazing essences. I was trying to remember the first one I got, but it was something like lime and
Was it Complete Bliss, which has got some rose and some lime and black pepper? Could have been that one.
it could have been, it was just really unusual, beautiful. And I had it burning while I had baths. So I've just followed your journey and it's been incredible.
Oh, thank you. And do you know what? Likewise, because you're right, we launched about the same time. And that's like nearly 20 years ago now.
I know.
And I remember I just couldn't afford to get my brows done at that point with you. And then every once in a while I'd think, I must go to Blink. And the difference between having it done in some scrappy little place and coming to Blink and having a real, I was like, oh.
I wish I'd known then, because I'd have just popped you in the chair and it would have been on the house. I'd been delighted.
We could have done all those swaps all that time ago, but yeah.
I know, and it's so nice now connecting with entrepreneurs that have been doing this for such a long time, because often it's a build, sell, and which can be the dream, but also we've been in the game for such a long time, and it's lovely that our brand's still relevant and we have such loyal customers. But I want to hear about your journey and tell me, when was that pivotal moment that you decided to go from journalist, I think, to entrepreneur?
Well, do you know what? There's so many sort of little parts of me making that decision. And I always think that's quite important to let people know, because I think so many people want to start a business and they're all kind of waiting for this light bulb moment or this one big idea, this kind of aha. And I don't think that happens for many people. I think it's kind of a series of little signals or bits of thoughts that kind of ladder up. And that's what happened to me. And I was a journalist, as you say, for 8 years. I loved that. It was brilliant. It was a fantastic part of my life. But we were working on, I was a celebrity editor, so I was working on the covers, and again, this is before social media.
And which magazine was this?
Well, latterly, Glamour, which is now folded, but at the time was the #1 women's glossy.
Celebrity, I mean,
yeah,
wow.
Brilliant fun. But of course, I was flying from London, New York to LA, and there was no such thing as wellbeing then. There was nobody did a 4-day week. There was no flexi working. I mean, the world was a different place, as everyone over the age of 35 can remember.
Exciting.
It was exciting. I mean, other problems.
Yeah.
Everything comes with the pros and cons, right? But I was working like a total nutter, and I started with really bad anxiety. And what's interesting now is we obviously all talk about mental health, and that's a great thing. We didn't talk about them. Anxiety wasn't a word, it wasn't a thing, there was no understanding of it whatsoever. And by the way, nothing bad had happened to me. I was just pushing too much in. When I think back now, just cramming a lot into this, okay, I was 28 and most people do at that sort of age, but I wasn't fueling myself properly. I wasn't eating the right things. I wasn't seeing the light of day. I wasn't exercising. I mean, it was just a different place, the world then. And so I started having really bad anxiety, and I just didn't understand what it was. And I remember it was my mum saying, you just don't look after yourself, simple as. And I went on a kind of year of, I suppose, looking after myself a bit more. And I retrained then as a nutritionist and aromatherapist, and went into sort of very dusty health food shop, which was, a world away from a sort of Whole Foods that you might find on every street corner now. and you know, the place is full of like nuts and 2 old bananas in a basket outside, and that's it.
Yes.
You know, very uninspiring. But at the back was these essential oils, and I was kind of, I thought, oh, that's kind of interesting. I bought a few of those and brought them back and sort of started blending in my tiny little bathroom. And that really sort of sparked the journey of me being interested in aromatherapy and looking at kind of the needs that not only I had, but the friends around me had, and realizing that actually most people I knew either had an issue with stress and some sort of ramification of it, a bit mine being anxiety, but other sort of issues around that, poor sleep, lack of energy, mood sort of fluctuations. And I thought, gosh, you know, is there place for a beauty brand or something that is concerned with how you feel on the inside? Again, this is 2005. This is the time of the cosmeceutical. People are interested in how they look only. And I'm like, you know, when you go in and you're buying skincare and it's like dry skin, you know, normal skin, combination skin, oily skin, imagine a place where you would go in and people would say, but how do you feel? Are you stressed? Are you not sleeping? So I'm kind of percolating all these things. And my sister was working for Friends of the Earth at the time, and she was really interested in naturals. And of course, nobody else was. But I'm thinking, gosh, there's a lot of chemicals that we're putting into normal skincare products. Is there room for something that's completely natural? So there's all these little bits in my head that are sort of, you know, and that was really the start of the idea for something that would be a natural brand, that would be all about sort of how you felt on the inside, and that would be sort of defining that well-being journey, I suppose, by you coming in via stress or sleep or lack of energy or mood. And that was sort of the idea of NEOM starting. And then of course the next chapter is actually how I started and majoring on candles, because I didn't have the money to launch a full beauty brand and all the products that we've got.
So it was an entry point for you, actually, candles.
Yeah, it was, because you know, I had this idea. Then we would create these products and they would be just these 100% natural fragrances, and they would work on these routines that you'd be able to put in your bath, and you would be able to inhale via something in your room, and you would, you know, maybe spritz on a mist, and it would be about this routine. And then of course the reality of, you know, I can't afford to spend 100, you know, buy 100 different product lines. So what am I going to major on? And I stumbled across this fact that about 97% of candles in the UK, and candles was just going to be one of the products that we launched, were made with paraffin wax and scented only with synthetic fragrances. And actually that figure's barely changed now in 2025 to 20 years ago, very surprisingly. And I thought, gosh, that's a byproduct of petroleum that we're burning in our homes. And, you know, is surely there's a space for people wanting something that's a natural alternative. And by the way, not only would it have none of those chemicals in, but it also, in my head, would burn and release these really lovely fragrances that as you breathe them in, they would work. And then there would be this sort of treatment effect that you could create in your home. So I sort of built this picture up as I was product developing at the same time, I suppose.
Gosh, you were really ahead of your time. And at that time, I think it was Jo Malone, Diptyque that we burnt, but it's very much about creating an atmosphere in the home. And then when I got my NEOM candle, I was in the bath and I was inhaling, because that wasn't going, as you see the black smoke coming out. So, you know, I think that's, you know, the foresight, but it sounds like it was a really organic journey as well.
Well, it was too early, if I'm really honest about our journey. It was too early. People were a bit interested in naturals, but not really. They were very much in the mind of the cosmeceutical. They hadn't quite got to the place where they are now, where I think we might use, you know, one type of brand for skincare, but then we want something maybe a bit more natural when it comes to the body and the home. They weren't in that space. The understandings of natural weren't where they are now. The appetite for well-being wasn't there. Again, the word wasn't really being used. It seemed like it was a very niche group of people that were interested in health and well-being. So I was too early, if I'm really honest. And I ended up then selling initially to spas and having to go around, honestly, with like a carrot and kind of explaining to people, you know, the therapist, does everybody know the difference between an organic carrot and a non-organic carrot, and having to go right back to basics with that explanation so people had a basic understanding.
Oh, that's so interesting. And now look, you're everywhere. I mean, every John Lewis you go into, there's NEOM and there's diffusers, and the beginnings of those entrepreneurs' journeys, I think just fill people with some kind of comfort that it's not an overnight success. And I got asked the question on a podcast I did it last week, you know, what would you say to an entrepreneur? What advice would you give them? Go for it, because people sit there contemplating it. And I said, kind of yes, because you can sit and think about it forever, but you've just got to get on with it. And it is terrifying, but you need to be committed to that journey, I think, because like you say,
Yeah.
you know, taking a carrot and a suitcase across spas, that's kind of what you have to do.
It wasn't what I had in mind.
No,
That's definitely
but,
for
you
sure.
know, it's a journey. It's never easy.
Yeah.
And for those overnight wonders, it's a rare thing. So
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of points to that. First is, you know, whatever you conceive of pre-launching your brand, you will inevitably get to a slightly different place, if not like a fundamentally different place, because you will iterate that product or that offering as time goes on. So I think so many people go, I haven't quite got the right idea, or I'm trying to perfect it. And I'm like, but you're going to massively change it as it goes to market anyway, because how could you know from your bedroom what's quite right? You'll only know when it's out there and you're testing. So to your point, just get going, because it will change as time goes on. You know, the way you explain it will have to be refined. The colours might not be right. The actual product development might need to be updated. So much of it will change. So I'd get going, because you're going to change it as its life progresses. Yeah. So definitely say that. And I'd also say, you know, I think my version of, you know, people say, oh, the Instagram lifestyle with the kind of young girls looking fantastic and lovely lifestyles, that doesn't affect me at 47 in the same way that it might have done at 27. But I think my version of that would be, as you say, seeing those people with that overnight success, and you go, oh my God, is that not what everyone's doing? And I think that's just a small percentage. And so many other people, the vast majority, have a much slower kind of growth, and that story is not as bang overnight. And I don't think that's a bad thing, because quite often with those brands that quickly launch and quickly get that notoriety, that must be exciting, I'm sure, but also quite often what goes up must come down. And growing something that's very sticky and has a real following, and, you know, has that emotional connection and that trust with the customers, is always something that I actually wanted and I prefer, because it feels a lot more solid. You know, I look at my daughter now, who's 15, and I think those trends that come in and she's suddenly all over, and you think, oh, why did I not have that idea? Sure as little eggs, they are something she's like turning a nose up at 2 months later, and I think, oh gosh.
It's very trend-led, and I think trying to deal with that as an entrepreneur is quite hard, because you know, we do need to adapt, but ultimately, you know, it's the brand has to have longevity, it has to have legs, and I think over these years we've both built that up, so people really understand who we are, and it's not we're not here today, gone tomorrow, hopefully. But also, you know, Blink is becoming, it's a lifestyle for me now. It's part of my life. Yeah. And I'm really pleased as time has gone on that I've learned how to manage that better and to have a balance now, so that I can really enjoy being the founder of a brand. Whereas I think about when I started and with young kids, it was crazy. And like you say, it was like I felt burnt out almost every day as I got home.
Totally.
And for you now, do you think you've got to a place where you can have a bath, light your candle, and just think, I love what I do?
I do, and I think you're right. You've got to ask yourself, you've got to plan for longevity, for sure. Unless you have a plan to come in, build something and sell it very quickly. I would always say, ask yourself some basic questions about what you want out of life. It's fascinating how when you talk to young entrepreneurs, they sort of almost just attach a number to what they think success is. And I'm like, okay, But how about if you wanted to go for half that number and work 3 days a week and pick the kids up from school and have an amazing team and go on, would you prefer that? They go, oh yeah. And I think, well, at least ask yourself that question then. Try and build up that sort of fuller picture of exactly what good looks like to you. Because also if you want to get that really big number at the expense of everything else, 9 times out of 10, you'll have to go for funding around that. And then in many ways, you're working for someone else, and the control of which you sort of really wanted being an entrepreneur has been given or partly given away anyway. So I would always say, before you start with the number, try and map out the entire lifestyle, because that then builds into, you know, how you build up that much fuller business plan.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I never thought about a number. I always just thought about creating something that people would love and needed, even though they didn't realize they needed it at the time. And it's probably the same as you know, everyone was happy burning their, you know, candles that were probably filling their lungs with something, you know, that wasn't great. But yeah, so when I built Blink, I was really excited about building a brand that people loved and just creating something that was quite community driven. And I think if you start there rather than with a number, that really helps to drive success. You know, obviously, we have to keep an eye on numbers. That's absolutely crucial. And I think when you do get investment or you need funding, that you know is super important. I haven't gone there yet. I know that you have. But yeah, to get a balance, I think, between those two, you know, number versus brand.
I think even if you want the big number, you have to think of the brand and you have to think of the community. And, you know, people talk an awful lot about authenticity nowadays. And I think actually that means really understanding what that community is about and what they care about and where their sort of problems and pain points are, and understanding that before you go to the answer of the product or the service. Because otherwise you're sort of focusing on the icing of the cake and not the cake. So, you know, even now if we are developing something, I really like to think through what are those very specific moments that that customer would use that product. You know, we launched a calming pen that we can't keep in stock, which is like our most intense de-stress fragrance, and then got other ingredients, valerian root extracts, etc., that you can kind of put on your pulse points and seriously gives you that kind of moment of calm. And when I was launching that, I was like, I need to really think through those moments, not sort of just generically, but where are those moments? Is it before you do a big presentation to a board, or is it whilst the kids are screaming in the back of the car and you're like, on a Thursday morning at the end of the week? Or when are those moments and how do they really feel before I go to the product? Because I think there's nuances then in the product or the service that you will change when you really, really understand that moment. And also how you explain it to people, how you get that product across and get people going, oh yeah, I get that. That's exactly when I would need that. That's exactly how I would feel. A bit like we were talking about with the brows, you know, those times where you go, oh, I love the cheaper walk-in brows, and you go, that was okay. And then you come to Blink and you're like, oh, what, you know, I would be really thinking about campaigns along that line. That difference between a 6 out of 10 brow and a 10 out of 10 is like the difference between you having a cheese toastie and a filet mignon, or whatever it may
Love
be.
that.
It's that feeling that you want to sort of tap into and that you need to explain to people to get them kind of nodding along and going, yeah, I get that. That's why.
And I think another question I get asked is, what's a really important attribute to have as an entrepreneur? And I think empathy is. So really getting under the skin of your customer, and like you said, giving them the emotional benefit, not just the functional. And that's what makes a great brand, I think. So understanding, you know, for me, it was that a customer might be time poor. They want incredible brows, and they want to trust that when they walk in the door, they're going to leave feeling fabulous. And I think it's absolutely the same.
Totally. And I think you've got to also I always have this moment where I take my rose tinted glasses off and think, okay, to somebody walking past, it's just a shower gel, or it's just a candle, or it's just an eyebrow treatment. So let's be really harsh with ourselves about that and really look at it from a neggy point of view. They don't know anything, they don't care. And then from that point of view, how do you then really find out what's the difference and how you explain it? Because you can't assume people have got the time, the energy, the inclination to care. For us with fragrance, it's not, I do 100% natural fragrances. I don't know of any other brand that does truly 100% natural fragrances. They'll be made with, but they won't be truly 100%. But I have to assume that people come to us and they're like, yeah, okay, I like that. But actually, I love the sophistication of that synthetic brand over there, which I get, I understand. So I then have to make the fragrances as sophisticated, because I can't assume people are happy to take a downgrade in a fragrance profile, for example, just because it's natural. So again, take the rose glasses off and you know, the team will go, yeah, but it's natural. I'm like, nope, not good enough. How does it also have to be as good as a synthetic counterpart? So when people come into a store, even if they're not interested or they don't know about naturals or about well-being, we still win. So I'm quite harsh on myself when it comes to products or services in that way, because I think you've got to be realistic about how much time, inclination, care the average customer has. They're busy. They're watching every pound, even if they've got, quite a decent disposable income. And so, yeah, that's something that I'm always kind of quite tough on myself with.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think the thought process involved is, like you say, we think very deeply about it, but our customers are just flicking through, and now it's TikTok, social media, whatever, Insta, and it is telling your story in one sentence, getting their attention and getting to stand out. And it is a competitive world out there now. And when we started, we were the only ones. And then obviously competition inevitably happens. Someone asked me last week, how do you feel about competition? I said, I hate it. But actually, it keeps driving you forwards. And I wonder, how do you feel about the fact that it is a super crowded market? And like you say, you have to constantly get your stand out. But how do you sort of perceive competition?
Well, I love that there's loads more wellbeing brands, because for me, the well-being was a really difficult category only 5 years ago. I remember speaking to John Lewis, for example, and they were like, we love what you're doing, but basically there's either colour, beauty, or there's fragrance. Where do you want to be? And I was like, but we're well-being. And they were like, we can't really create a category for it. And I was like, you sort of have to. And there was that chicken and egg situation. And now, because people are talking about well-being in a much fuller sense, even if it's, Aloe Yoga and Lululemon and supplement brands, etc., then it's actually, the whole thing's lifted me. So that's good. Of course, if someone rips you off, there's always a moment where you're like, why did you do that? But then I just think, well, more for you, because I move so fast. You're ripping me off and I'll be ahead of it in 6 months' time, because actually one of my watch outs, I get bored. I'm like, on to the next, new fragrance, new packaging, new this, new way of speaking, new. So they end up then looking just tired and old and like NEOM 2 years ago very, very quickly, because, I'm kind of always pushing it forward. But yeah, in that time you think, and that's a note for people, don't just rip someone off, because if they're a decent brand and you're ripping them off because they're a decent brand, they will move and then you will look doubly kind of behind the times.
Yeah.
So it's never worth doing that, I honestly think. So there's a moment where I don't like it, but then it never sticks.
Yeah, you're right. And actually it propels me forwards, because I keep thinking, right, we just got to be, someone said to me, just focus on you and be bigger and better. And so I think that is the name of the game, really.
Yeah.
And can you explain a little bit about, the science really behind the essential oils and how that impacts someone's mood, health?
Yeah, so essentially all of the plant oils have chemicals within them, natural chemicals, but they have parts within them. And those parts react to your hypothalamus, which is in the front part of your brain. And those two things will trigger and help with the well-being need. But you will also be attracted to the fragrance of which you need. So if you come into our stores, for example, we do this scent discovery test. If you are needing more sleep, then the chemicals within the sleep fragrance we'll connect to your hypothalamus and say, actually, you need more help with sleep. Whereas if it's stress, it will be something else. So it's essentially about the receptors within the plant oils connecting with the front part of your brain.
So how would I go about finding out what my wellness need would be? So what would be the aromatherapy essence that I would need to sort of enhance my mood?
So it's really fascinating. Our latest stats in our store show that 80% of people think they know what their wellness need is, and actually it's very different. So what I mean by that is you might come in and say, I'm really stressed. And we might do our scent discovery test in store. You can also do it in John Lewis. And we will find out that your underlying well-being need is actually different. It could be you're stressed because you're not sleeping, or you're not sleeping well because you've not got enough energy during the day. And that's all determined. Your body will tell you based on the fragrance that you like. So if you go into a normal synthetic perfume house, you'll pick a fragrance on what you like, and that's great, and that's fine, and that's lovely. If you come to NEOM, you will be attracted to the fragrance that your body needs. So the plant, the chemicals within that plant will be reacting to your hypothalamus at the front of your brain, and you will like the fragrance that your body needs. So at any one time, you shouldn't like all the NEOM fragrances. And it's the same for me. It's funny, like everyone goes, well, why don't you like that one? Because I'm testing them all the time. And I'm like, because I don't need that right now. So you should like probably about a quarter of the fragrances that we have. So we have to be very clear when people come in the store. You're not going to walk around and love everything here. You're going to really love one or two fragrances that your body needs at any one time.
That makes complete sense, because I know when I go for a massage and they say, do you want an oil to
Yes.
energize you or to calm you down? I inevitably go for calm, and then I love the lavender. And so you're right, it's just something that
Totally. And that changes as life goes on. It changes massively. I mean, I've seen over 20 years, I've gone through periods where I'm absolutely all over our sleep fragrance. And then genuinely, there's times I'm like, oh, I really can't burn that. And everyone in the office is like, oh my God, what's going on here? And I go, no, if they're new, they don't understand the principle so much. I'm like, that's because I'm fine right now. I'm really lacking in energy at the moment. So it will change as your life changes, as your well-being needs change, as you're going through different, you know, seasons and different issues that you've got.
So everyone should just trust their inner instinct when they go in and need to discover a scent. It will call you out.
Do a blind test is what we would always say, because you don't want to be, you know, you don't want to be really into the pink one or the name of this. You need to go with really where your senses are pulling you.
And actually, I do a yoga class, and she often burns a NEOM candle, and it is very calming. It has a lot of lavender in it. But I then used it for trying to get me to sleep, and it was lovely. So, and then my husband just comes and blows it out before house sets on fire. But are there any particular well-being trends that you think are worth exploring at the moment?
So I hate the term wellbeing trend, and I will tell you why. Because it shouldn't be a trend. This is a lifestyle. Anything that's a trend, you know, a top should be a trend, a bag should be a trend. But us learning as a community, as a country, that, you know, things like getting out and walking before 12 in the morning, because that's going to set your internal circadian rhythm, us understanding that, you know, nearly 90% of us are deficient in magnesium, and therefore, you know, and that works on about 360 functions in the body, and we should pretty much all be taking magnesium. They are not trends. This is us being very late to the game in understanding some basic things. Having said that, I massively champion the idea that everyone should have a wellbeing toolkit that works for them. That yours will be different to mine. You may love running. You may need, you know, extra vitamin D. You may, you know, have a very different circadian rhythm when it comes to sleep time, for example. But create a toolkit. Be committed to making sure that that toolkit is something that works for you, is very personal, may change over time, and you enjoy, because otherwise you won't do it. That's something that I think, you know, I'm right behind championing. But I really don't like it when people go, hey, have you tried charcoal, for example? It's like, what? It's ridiculous. And that is almost completely at odds with everything that we say, which is, you know, those small steps can ladder up to a big difference and create something that's sustainable and is and can evolve with you as life evolves, that you can pass on to your children, that you can develop and build on, etc., etc. We are the anti-trend brand where that's concerned.
That's fascinating. What's in your toolkit at the moment?
Okay, so my toolkit is pretty basic. I make sure that I get out in sunlight before midday, every day for about 20 minutes. All of the data from all of the years of interviewing the best experts, that's the best way you can work on starting your circadian rhythm in the morning, so you get enough light into the back of your eyes and it kickstarts the internal clock, and therefore you'll sleep better and you'll be less stressed, etc. So that's definitely one. I do always supplement with fish oils. I think there's some amazing data on how that protects the brain, especially now we're getting older and paranoid about degenerative diseases, etc. Same for magnesium. You know, it affects so many functions in the body. So I always take magnesium. I take it at bedtime. If I've had a heavy night, I will take
powder.
No, I take a supplement. You can take...
Any particular one that you like?
Yeah, I think the supplement world is the Wild West, and there's a couple of brands that I rate. I love Bare Biology, I like Wild Nutrition, I like Equi London. I generally stick to them. I think there's a lot of people that are just, you know...
Ancient and Brave?
Like Ancient and Brave, they're great. Yeah, really, really great. So stick to those kind of brands. I make sure that I do some movement, of course. I'm older, so, you know, I do weights as well as walking. I don't like running. I'm not really a yoga bunny, so that works for me. And so I make sure I do those two different things. I have to have a sleep routine because, again, at 25, I could sort of fall asleep anywhere and live on 6 hours sleep. Now, if I've not had 8 hours, I feel rubbish. So I do have a sleep routine. I'm quite religious about the time that I turn off the light and I read a paperback book for half an hour. Look, you know, there are nights, of course, where I'll stay up till midnight drinking too much rosé. Life is short, of course. Yes, I like that. But I also know if I've done that, it's going to affect... Yeah, exactly. So, you know, I kind of in moderation. So that would be something. I eat whole foods. I'm not, you know, I don't stick to any food group diet, but whole, unprocessed foods, knowing where you would pick organic, milk, meat, you know, vegetables with thinner skins and fruit with thinner skins versus things that, you know, I'd be less bothered about. So just understanding kind of food groups in general is really important. So I'm very basic. Let's be honest, I'm not doing yoga on a beach with a green smoothie at 5:30.
No, but you sound like you are disciplined and that you really do understand what suits you, and that it's a very clear toolkit that you've got there. Mine is quite confused and muddled. I am overwhelmed with all that's out there. So
keep it simple.
Yeah.
Just keep it simple. And my advice as well is only do the things that you like. The minute I say this will work and make you feel better, but you don't actually really want to do it, then how is it making you feel better?
switching from coffee to matcha, I'm struggling with that one.
Don't do it then.
Yeah.
You just don't need to do that. You know, if you're having a full and varied diet, then you don't need to have the matcha. It's just like, you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
So I think it's also going, pick and choose what works for you. If it's not something that actually adds to you, even in the short term, we've been walking around quite blind. I mean, again, you rewind to me having to walk around with the 2 carrots. I think our knowledge, especially our generation, is pretty poor in many ways for many people. So I think sometimes it's not a trend as much as, oh, we're now aware of that. Brilliant. You know, we now realise that that's...
Giving it a label almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully that's not something that's then going to go away.
And tell me, it's a question that I love to ask people. Do you think you were always made for this? Do you think if something else had come and diverted the path you were on all those years ago, that you might have been doing something very different? Or do you think you'd have come back to this at some point?
I think I'm very entrepreneurial. Definitely. I like to kind of do my own thing. I love the creativity of building something. But I love being a journalist. I, you know, would like to go back to uni and, you know, do an art degree or something. In many ways, the frustration for me with life is that you only get one choice to do something.
You can do it all. I'm doing a master's at the moment.
Are you?
Yeah, so you can do it.
Amazing. Oh, we need to speak about that later because I'm really interested in that.
You have to cram it in.
Yeah, I think I like I couldn't really stick to one thing. I think one thing bores me, which is kind of why doing this is quite interesting, because my job's evolved as the business has grown and my role has evolved, the brand has evolved. So no, I think the idea of staying still and doing one thing forevermore fills me with absolute dread, actually. So no, I sometimes think, oh, I could have done a chain of cafes. I would have loved that. I love food. I could have done anything with food. I love art. I'd have liked to have gone deeper into the art world. I love writing. I miss being a journalist, even though that whole industry's gone a bit funny. So probably that was a good thing to get out.
And you now have a platform, actually, and I think you do a lot of writing, which is really great. So, and that you've got plenty of years ahead of you. So.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of eat, pray, love of our generation, isn't it? Is to be able to do various different elements of your career. We did a community event yesterday, and I was really taken aback by how the majority of the people have a very multi-hyphen lifestyle. Most people are not doing, or most of our customers, I should say, are not doing a 9 to 5 Monday to Friday role anymore. And especially as you get older, I think that's one of the lovely things, if you've managed to find yourself a bit of a niche, is then to be able to populate that with different parts of it.
Yeah, and I think, again, as an entrepreneur and an employer, it's quite hard because I think Gen Z, they've changed. They are not prepared to work in the office all week, and they want to have time to exercise and see their friends, and rightly so. But as an employer, sometimes you look back and think, my goodness, I was in the office till 9 every night. So it's a good thing, but it's changed. And as a business, all businesses have had to adapt. So you're right, it's multifaceted, which is great. Yeah. And what's next for NEOM?
Well, I'm really excited now that I think really only the last 5 years people have really cottoned on to the idea that wellness is a necessity rather than a luxury, that people who are not well-being evangelists by any manner of means are still dipping their toes a little bit into it in some way, even if it's just, having a lovely bath and thinking a bit more about that routine or prioritising sleep or whatever it may be. And I really would like to sort of expedite that knowledge now, because it's been a long time trying to explain to people, hey, do you know what natural means? Hey, do you know what well-being means? La, la, la. And now people are there. I'm like, let's go, and really expedite that. So, I love opening our stores because they're kind of true well-being hubs where we can have the brand really explained, and so we're doing more of that. We're in America now. We launched 2 years ago. That's exciting, definitely. And it was interesting there. I thought, oh gosh, surely the Americans have got well-being sewn up, and this kind of little pocket of really evangelist sort of people have, but then it sort of falls off a cliff. So really that mid kind of market of people who are just regular you and I's, they're the women and the men that I talk to. And so, yeah, just kind of going where that's concerned.
That sounds super exciting. And if you can conquer the US, then, although Trump's not making that easy right now, but still. I've got to ask you about brows, of course. You've actually got great brows, and we're about to do a lovely treatment for you.
And they'll be better then.
And they'll be better. But when did you discover threading?
Well, when did I discover threading? I think when I became sort of in my 30s, I realised that actually to get the basics, I suppose it's the same with fashion, right? To get the basics right is sort of more important than anything else.
God, that was our strapline, brows, it's basic.
Really?
Quite a while. So there you go. Yeah.
And I think now, I think it sort of is, if I can get that right and my skin's looking good and I've put a brush through my hair, I suppose when I was much younger, it'd be about a fancy eyeshadow or something great, and on your lips or whatever. Now I'm like, just get the basics right.
Yeah.
And
kind of foundation.
Yeah. I think so. So I love that sort of laminated look that the young girls go for, but it's not for me now. I love sort of looking at it vicariously through my daughter.
You can get that with gel. We'll show you how.
I'm too old for that, surely.
No.
I must be. But I think just having them looking nice and then I just feel like it's sort of it's a pull together. It's like a good handbag.
Yes, just lifts everything very subtly.
Yeah.
So, well, it's been an absolute pleasure having you, Nicola. We could chat all day, and
definitely,
I'm sure we'll continue the chat. But thank you so much for joining me on the Brow Sofa.
Thank you for asking me.